call to order the March 11th City Council business meeting. City Clerk Clark, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Ariel.
Here.
Councilmember Root.
Here.
Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Councilmember Roche.
Here.
Councilmember Pinkerton.
Here.
Councilmember Hutchings.
Here.
Mayor Shoemaker.
Here. Please rise as you are able and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Each member of council has received a copy of the minutes from our February 11th business meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, they will stand approved as written. We didn't have anyone sign up for citizen comments this evening, so we'll move on to our business items, beginning with item 6A, appointment of Ariel Rogers as a ministerial recorder. Administrator Gracely, will you summarize for us, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll summarize by reading the request to council, requesting that Ariel Rogers, Assistant Clerk of Court, be appointed to Ministerial Recorder for Simpsonville Municipal Court. Ariel has been here for 2 years and 4 months. In this time, she has been a model employee whose work has been exemplary. She has a great work ethic and learns duties very quickly. In this new role, she would assume responsibilities in the absence of the administrative judge during normal business hours. Her duties would involve signing warrants and conducting arraignments. Ariel has gained knowledge of all paperwork and processes in this role while working with the chief judge, on-call judges, and the administrative judge. Our previous administrative judge was in that same role and was appointed ministerial recorder by this council, and she's now the administrative judge. So it makes for a great succession plan. That is all.
Okay, thank you. A motion is in order. Councilmember Hutchings.
Mayor and Council, I'll make a motion to approve the appointment of Ariel Rogers as ministerial recorder.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Hutchings with a second from Councilmember O'Rear. Now, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed signify by saying no. That motion carries by a vote of 7-0 and is unanimous. And at this time, we're going to have Judge Strong and Ms. Rogers come forward and do the swearing-in ceremony. If you would, please flip those microphones around so that we capture this on our audio recording. Thank you.
And repeat after me, please. I,
Ariel Rogers,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties
of the office
to which I have been appointed,
and that I will,
to the best of my ability, discharge the duties thereof, and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of this state and of the United States. As a judge of the city of Simpsonville, I will equally, fairly, and impartially, to the best of my ability and skill, exercise the trust reposed in me, and will use my best endeavor to preserve the peace and carry into effect, according to the law, the purpose for which I have been appointed. So help me God. Congratulations.
Your Honor, let me be the first person to say, congratulations, Your Honor. Thank you. Item 6B, second reading of Ordinance O-2025-01, the lease agreement with Crown and Bloom for 102 Academy Street. Administrator Gracely, will you summarize, please?
Yes, Mayor and Council. This is the second reading of the ordinance required to lease the property just back here at 102 Academy Street, which is the former fire department admin building. You all approved leasing that building to Crown and Bloom in 2 previous meetings, and this would be the final reading for that approval so we can get the lease agreement signed. It is very timely that it is today because this morning they were featured on Fox Carolina. I sent you all a link. I think they're going to be a great addition to the Simpsonville business community and certainly a great addition to the park.
Thank you, Administrator Gracely. A motion is in order. Councilmember Roche.
Mayor, I move that council approve the second reading of Ordinance O-2025-01, lease agreement with Crown and Bloom for 102 Academy Street.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Roche with a second from Councilmember Hutchings. Discussion? All right, hearing none from council, I will just say that I saw the piece on Fox, and they were very nice to give a really wonderful shout out to the city of Simpsonville. So I think that they're going to be a welcome addition. So any further discussion? Councilmember Hutchings.
I just want to say, I think in our last meeting, there was a discussion about having some of a library function at the shop, and I'd just like to strongly encourage that we have some facet of that there, since that was what the building was initially. I think they indicated they could do that, some books and things for people coming in. But I'd like to encourage them to do that if they could.
Okay.
Council? So all of those in favor of approving on second reading Ordinance O-2025-01, lease agreement with Crown and Bloom for 102 Academy Street, signify by saying yes. Yes. All opposed signify by saying no. That motion carries 7-0 and is unanimous. If there are no objections, I'm going to move item E up to this point on the agenda so that the representative from the GCRA can make their presentation and not have to sit through the entire council meeting. And if you are ready to go, hold on just one moment. All right, and if you want to take this remote, that'd be helpful. So the big button is the one in the middle. That's the one that goes forward, okay? So before you get started, let me just say that we are doing item 6E, Resolution R-2025-02, Greenville County Redevelopment Authority Annual Community Development Block Grant and Home Allocation. Administrator Gracely, do you have a summary?
I will defer to José right now to give you the PowerPoint presentation, and then if there are any questions about the resolution itself, I'll be happy to answer those.
All right, thank you. All yours.
Okay. Good evening, City Council of Simpsonville. My name is José Reynoso. I'm with the Greenville County Redevelopment Authority, and today I'm going to be presenting the annual action plan for the City of Simpsonville for 2025. It's a brief agenda of what we're going to be discussing today, kind of introduction of myself. I do have one board member here with me today, Ms. Denise, and then kind of an overview of what the annual action plan is, what the funding sources that the City of Simpsonville receives, what the allocation for the prior 2 years, and your draft for what the allocation is for this year, and a brief overlook of the programs that we kind of run with the funding that we receive. So what is the annual action plan? So the annual action plan is the application that we submit to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, and it is what we kind of use when we submit to HUD as to what our plan is for your funding, whether it be with the use of CDBG funds, which is the Community Development Grant, your home funds, and then the Emergency Solutions Grant. And so that runs from the July 1st all the way to June 30th of the very next year. And this year will mark the first year of our 5-year consolidated plan, which we're also running at this time. And so here are some of the rules that we have to kind of follow with the community development grants. At least 70% of it has to be used for individuals in the low to moderate income. And all those activities that we do fund must fall under one of the 3 criteria: benefit low to moderate individuals or households, prevention or elimination of the slum and blight, and urgent community development, whether that be infrastructure work, demolition, or any activities as such. Home funds are used for the construction of either home ownership or rental units to benefit low to moderate income individuals. And so this chart here kind of shows the prior 2 years of funding that you guys received and the proposed 2025 funding that you guys will be receiving for this year. And so through working with the city of Simpsonville, here's kind of the breakdown of the allocation. We've kind of broken it down so more of your allocation goes towards the construction of new housing units, whether that be rental or home ownership, whether that's just us as a agency building them ourselves in the city or working with a partner to develop multiple home ownership units or rental units. Of course, you've also see demolition is also a big factor in that. With demolition, we kind of allocate the large amount of funding with the intended use of that parcel eventually becoming a home ownership unit or a rental unit. We do allocate a little bit towards your economic development through facades for the storefront or small business loans. And then you guys, as a city, do fund 2 nonprofit agencies in the Center for Community Services and then your senior program. And so the chart here shows some of the eligible activities through the CDBG funds, again, through home ownership, those home ownership units, rental units, first-time home buyers programs that we run. That's through a partner with the Community Works Carolina that does down payment assistance or they assist with closing costs. The investor program that we run as well. So if you have investors who have rental units that need any kind of repairs done, we can do a small time loan for that so we can get more affordable units out to the community. We also run a rehab program to do major repairs, minor repairs for home ownership. Our own in-house loan program that we do as well. And then we also have a rental assistance for homeless prevention for those that are at risk of being homeless. And then we have the rapid rehousing portion of it, which is for those people or those individuals or families that are already on the streets, kind of get them housed. And our goal with that is we don't intend to put a family or individual in a household that they can't maintain. So our goal is to always have them in a unit where no more than 30% of their income goes towards paying rent. Any more than that, then we see that they usually can't sustain that. So we want to prevent that on our end. And then some of our community development programs that we run, we do infrastructure improvement, whether that's building of sidewalks, kind of repairing sewer lines, our demolitions, facility improvement, which we've done before with the believe it's the senior center that you guys have, making it more ADA accessible. Then again, our public service activities through our nonprofits like Centers for Community Services or the one of the senior centers. Those also provide food assistance and utilities assistance. And then our economic development, which again is our small business loans, usually no more than 3% on a loan. And then our facade improvement program, which is more dedicated to small businesses on your main street to kind of any upgrades onto the front of their store. And that is a forgivable loan over 5 years for them. Never have to pay anything back as long as they stay. And then here is a timeline of what our schedule is for the annual action plan. So throughout March, we'll be visiting all 5 municipalities, again, going over their annual action plan. Towards April, I'll have a more general annual action plan for the whole of Greenville County. After that, towards the end of April, we'll also submit that to the County of Greenville for their approval. Once we have their approval, the final approval, that goes to HUD in May, bar any delays at the federal level from our end. And the funding should be available July 1st for the city to use. And again, thank you. If there's any questions, you can reach out to our Executive Director, Joe Smith, and we'll be accepting comments all the way till May 6th, a week before its final submission to HUD.
Any questions for Jose? Councilmember Roop.
I do have one. Maybe you could give me clarity on. It looks like the monies toward this has more than doubled the last 2 years. What causes those influx? Those monies to go up?
So some of those influxes are incurred. It's probably most likely to the program income. So when we as an agency build a rental unit or a homeownership unit, if that, for example, a homeownership unit sells and we make a profit, we reinvest that into the city of Simpsonville. So any profit that we make off of a homeownership is then reinvested to you guys for the next year. Same thing with any kind of rental. If we have a rental, any kind of profit that's made from that, we try to again recycle it back into the city of Simpsonville's pool of funding to use.
Follow-up question. How much of those funds, I'm sure there's a limit, but for infrastructure, for like playground equipment for city parks and those things in our city, can some of those funds go toward those, and have they? Maybe Minister Gracely could go that as well.
Gotcha. So we kind of speak with we have a meeting prior to this with your city councilman, with your city admin, and so we kind of discuss the allocations for the CDBG funds. If we see more of a need that you guys need more infrastructure work, we can always reallocate. So that's not always set in stone. If you guys see that you guys need more infrastructure work, we can take some from demolition and reallocate it to infrastructure. So there is no limit as to what you can allocate to each kind of category. We leave it up to you guys. If you see more of a need in this category than in another, we can always reallocate funds.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hutchings.
The CDBG funds, has that already been allocated to specific projects, or is that something that someone could apply for now?
Yes. So they're still able to apply. So the projects are always ongoing. If we're talking about a nonprofit looking to receive any of the CDBG funds, that window has actually closed. But for you guys, typically allocate, I believe, 10 to 12,000 for those nonprofits. But for any other projects, it's kind of an ongoing thing with the city. We typically wait for the city to reach out to us to let us know how they want to use their funding. So if you guys see a project that you want to do a demolition or an infrastructure piece, you would just reach out to us, and then we would kind of work it out with the funding that you have available. And then we would kind of go through the process of figuring out, okay, is this a multi-year project, or is this a project we can do within the year to use your CDBG or home funds?
So this amount is broken out in here by dollar amounts for various things like public service programs, facility improvement. Mm-hmm. Those have not been identified yet, but that's the amount of money that we can allot to that particular thing. Yes, sir.
They've not been identified. We leave it to you guys. When you guys identify a project, just let us know, and we will work together to fund it.
And that identification process would come about by the application from
So since these funds are already allocated to you guys, you would just let us know how you guys intend to use the funds. You wouldn't need to go through an application process. These are already strictly your funds available to you.
And if I may just clarify for Councilmember Roop, any of the projects would have to meet the national eligibility requirements. It would either have to benefit low and moderate income, it would have to be for elimination of slum and blight, or it would have to have an imminent threat that we would be addressing. So for playground equipment, that would only mean in parks that are in low and moderate income neighborhoods, which would likely, if the census tract does not show that, then it would require a door-to-door survey to see if it would qualify.
And we would do that survey on your behalf to identify a community or a neighborhood that needs to be a low to moderate neighborhood. So we would do that on your behalf.
Are there costs to that?
No, it's just we already pay for the database that does that, and all I have to do is just plug in the numbers, and then we would identify the actual neighborhood and what homes we need to include, and then we would just send out either an email of actual physical mail, or we would send some of our staff to knock door to door to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know off the top of your head the definition for low and moderate incomes?
So there is actually an income guideline for that HUD puts out every April. I didn't include it in this one because, again, it's going to update in April, so I wouldn't know the actual numbers at the moment. But I believe the median income is $88,000 for all of Greenville County. They don't actually break it down by municipality. It's more of by county. So for Greenville County, I believe it's $88,000, and it'll change in April. It may go down, it may go up, but they usually try to identify by what's the median, what's the 50% of that income. So if it's $88,000 for the medium, it'll most likely be $44,000 is what they're looking for, and under is what would qualify. But then it always changes depending on the number of people in the household. So it's a very convoluted chart.
Complicated, yeah.
Yes.
Got it. Got it. All right. Council, any further questions? Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you, sir.
Do we, I guess we haven't done a motion yet, so I guess we need to do a motion for the approval of Resolution R-2025-02. Do I hear a motion? Councilmember Roche?
Mayor, I move that council approve Resolution R-2025-02, GCRA Annual CDBG and Home Allocation.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Roche with a second from Councilmember Roop. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying yes. Yes. All opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries 7-0 and is unanimous. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Item 6C, first reading of Ordinance O-2025-02 to amend O-2018-07. Councilmember Pinkerton, will you summarize, please?
Right. There are no changes to the ordinance as previously proposed, so I move that council approve the first reading of Ordinance 0-2025-02, amending 2018-07.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Pinkerton with a second from Councilmember O'Rear. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed signify by saying no. That motion carries 7-0. Item 6D, first reading of Ordinance O-2025-03, sale of city-owned property. Administrator Gracely, will you summarize, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This ordinance is up for first reading for the sale of the former City Hall property. As many of you know, because you were on council at the time, these discussions have been ongoing for 4 years. The sales contract was entered into based on the authorization from previous council back in 2021, and the amount was based on the appraised value of the property at that time. The ordinance is to get us in the final stretch of being able to close on that property, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Administrator Gracely. A motion is in order. Councilmember Williams.
I move to approve the first reading of the ordinance 0-2025-03, the sale of the city-owned property.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Williams with a second from Councilmember Roche. Discussion? Councilmember Pinkerton.
Yeah, I'd first like to get some clarification. At the last meeting of the whole, we came out and voted on a motion that was put forward by the mayor and seconded to create the ordinance 0-2025-02. And I asked a question about it, whether it was final at that point, and said, no, we have two readings. But my concern is that we voted to create the ordinance, and we didn't get the ordinance until Friday, and yet even till Monday to get the contract that was associated with it. So my question is, are we doing this procedurally correct? Because generally what we've done in the past with ordinances, the ordinance has been part of the agenda, which it wasn't during that meeting, and then it would be voted on to move, to approve, to go to the next readings.
So
that's my question to start with.
I think that we are okay on that. That's the purpose of having a first and second reading. And as a matter of fact, there have been times when we have made amendments to ordinances between first and second reading and haven't gone back and started from scratch with that. So I believe the first and second reading is just for this very purpose, so that the public gets, their chance to hear and interact with council.
Can we get clarification on that through council? Because I can't get my head around the fact that we voted to create the ordinance. And at that point, it should, in my opinion and my thought, was that we would then be able to see the ordinance. It would be part of the next committee of the whole meeting to be moved forward for two votes. So I'm just questioning whether we have done this technically correct.
So,
and if we have, I'd appreciate it that we get some verification of that. The way I've read it in our own ordinance is that a council person can submit an ordinance to be approved through the agenda process, and then it goes for the first reading to go to be approved to go to the first and second readings for approval.
I think that's exactly. I mean, you might be hanging on the word "create the ordinance" but it was my understanding that we were voting to move this to this business meeting agenda, and that's what we do in committee of the whole, is decide what's going to be on the agenda. And that's really the primary purpose of committee of the whole. So it was my understanding that the action we took at our committee of the whole put this item on the agenda. So
that's your understanding. Is there any chance that we can get? Does anybody else agree with me? I'm concerned about that. I just think that we've bypassed a process that we normally have gone through.
Okay, so let me see if I can expedite this process. I rule that we have followed the procedure. Now it is a council member's option to appeal that ruling to all of council.
Well, I'll do this while I have the floor. I'll just make my comments, and then we can move forward with the rest of the comments. In this particular case, I wasn't part of the process to begin with, so my assessment in voting this in the affirmative effectively validates an item that was originally approved by previous council, which I was not a part of. So since I didn't participate in the initial formation of this approval 3+ years ago, my vote represents now my independent assessment of this agreement with the purchaser. In other words, it's problematic for me to support this ordinance since I cannot offer opinion to the original proposal. It's not up. The only thing that's up now is the ordinance and not the original agreement. So I will be voting no because I just wasn't there to approve the original version of this. So,
Councilmember O'Rear?
I'm not sure about the appeal of the assessment, but I'll throw my 2 cents worth in, which I'm sure surprises nobody. I think, I've thought about this too from a logistical standpoint, and what Councilmember Pinkerton's saying, I think, is correct. If the motion was to create the ordinance, then it seems like the ordinance would be created to be presented at the next committee of the whole for us to then look at that ordinance.
Councilmember Rule, that item has been ruled on.
Okay, well.
So there's a ruling.
All right, well, then we'll back up. For Administrator Gracely, my first time I ever really heard about this, because I'm like Councilmember Pinkerton, I wasn't on council, was from constituents about the sale of this property. And it being in 2021, what I don't get is we're literally being asked to, and really I didn't really like what happened the last meeting. We were asked to vote on something we didn't even have in front of us. We were asked to come out of the committee of the whole and vote to move forward the sale, and literally just got the contract Monday and the sale and the appraisal today. I didn't have a problem voting it forward because I'm at 100% right now voting things out of committee of the whole. But we didn't even have the information to vote on, but we were asked to vote on it, and I vehemently disagreed with that part. I would have been outvoted, but that's neither here nor there. But we literally voted on something we didn't have. We were asked to vote on sale. We didn't have a sale price. We didn't have sale dates. We didn't have contracts. But yet we were asked to vote, and we did. And so here we are. And I know we've been ruled on this, but here's my question: If this contract, which I didn't know it was a contract, I was under the impression we had a letter of intent, which is not a binding agreement. Everything I've seen about this is a binding agreement. How do you enter into a binding agreement before you even have the ordinance in place that allows for the binding agreement? So now what we're being asked to do is we're being asked to now give ourselves permission for something we've already done. That's getting the cart ahead of the horse on this. So how is that even possible to ask a council to go back and grant the permission that the previous council should have done then? Why was this ordinance not created at the time the previous council debated the sale of this property, which I will have to say, for public consumption? There were no other bids on this property. There were no other people that knew that the property was being sold. And there was no public knowledge of the sale price or any details with it. But what I disagree with is I have been, and I'm not going to speak for the newer council members, but we have literally been painted into a corner here. Because on the surface, legally, the city of Simpsonville has entered into a binding contract to sell a piece of property that we right now don't even have an ordinance that allows the city to do that. So now we're being asked to go in reverse and back it up. So why wasn't that done then? And my guesstimate would be because if you do it then, it's going to have to be public knowledge. So for over 3 years, the public has had no ability to even know what's going on, and hell, council didn't even know the sale price until Monday. So I can't support this because this to me is, and it's nothing to do with the developers or what they want to do. Don't paint me into a corner like this. I can't just say yes because some ball got rolling that should have never gotten rolling. Without this ordinance in the first place. Do the ordinance first and then come back and ask us to vote on the sale of the property. Don't agree to sell the property and then come back and ask a second council, binding a second council to a decision that was made over 3 years ago. So I'm going to have to vote no.
So as a point of clarification about what took place back in 2021 is the reason that we did not come out and vote to finalize the sale at that moment is because we would have then had to either lease back the property and pay a lease for the last 4 years or move to a different place and pay rent or whatever we would have had to do there. And all that money would have been just spent. It would have been a sunk cost in order to get to the point where we're moved into this building and then could now sell the city property. The not selling the property was at the city's request. This was something that we asked them to agree to. Would you be willing to postpone the finalization of the sale until we move out so that we don't have to enter into a lease agreement? There wasn't some nefarious motive or keeping some secret, other than when you enter into a project like this with somebody who is working on a complex business deal that involves more property owners than just the city of Simpsonville, that if we make that information public, it's their story to tell. If we make that information public, you can as a city mess up the deal to the point of where it won't move forward. So there's I don't think there was an intention of a prior council to somehow dupe a future city council into a deal that they don't like. I think it's very important to understand that the people that we have been talking to about this project that they are wanting to move forward with, they're an amazing group. It is a huge opportunity for the city of Simpsonville, and is a very, very good thing for us. We only have to look just across the street, basically just across Curtis Street at Burdett Central, and how successful that project has been. It's the same group, and they have a reach across the southeast doing projects like this that are just very, very good projects, something that's very, very well done. And again, what that ends up being, it's really not decided yet, but whatever they end up having that project be, we still get another crack at that. We still get to say whether we approve of that project or not. But that doesn't go forward without approving this ordinance and finalizing the sale. We are in a position of do we want to totally blow up a deal and potentially lose having a first-rate company that's going to do something similar or maybe even better than what they did with Burdett Central? Are we going to risk blowing that up and also risk the legal ramifications of backing out on a deal that City Council agreed to? I think it's problematic if that's the direction that Council decides to go. So, Councilmember Pinkerton?
Yeah, just to go a little bit further, the ordinance that we're voting on, and I don't have it in front of me, but it has the word intent or intends. And to your point, Mayor, they intend to put together an ID that has not been approved. It hadn't gone through planning department. It hadn't gone through that whole procedure. It has not gone through city council. And there is a potential that if they get to a point where they cannot put forward the product that they want with an ROI, or return on investment, and at that point they could either do a couple of things. They could build by the current zoning, which is business urban, and build by that, or they could sell the property, right? And so it's a little bit concerning. Again, I wasn't part of the original contract, but the intent clause, there's no shall in there. It's just the intent, and we are on a bit of a hook. To your point, they might be wonderful people, but wonderful people want to make money. So if there's no ROI, they could walk. And that's very concerning to me.
Councilmember O'Rear?
One, we never addressed why the ordinance just wasn't done back then, and we can talk about that in a second. As it comes to the lease back, who said the lease back could be $1 a month. I mean, it doesn't have to be a set amount. It could have been about nothing to have this deal. I don't think that's an impediment. The city's not losing anything if we say no right now, because we're not collecting any money on taxes on that land anyways. We can buy time. And I think if we pass this, we lose all sorts of leverage as it comes to what we can and can't approve. Not to mention the fact that I would have to defer to Councilmember Roche, because she would know a lot more than I would about this part of it. But I've never really heard of agreeing to a fixed price in a booming real estate market in Simpsonville 3 years in advance and sticking to it. To Councilmember Pinkerton's point, if we sell this for, I won't name just X amount of dollars, it could be worth a whole lot more than that right now, and it is. I couldn't imagine it not being. So we could end up getting a developer who just literally looks at us and says, if we don't get to build it exactly like we want, we're just going to sell it and make $500,000 off of it ourselves. Well, that $500,000 could be made for the city of Simpsonville's taxpayers if we reassess this and took its appraisal at today's market value. And it may not be staggeringly different, but it's different. And I think we owe that to the people of Simpsonville. I've just never heard. I couldn't imagine selling my home today and agreeing to a price 3.5 years in advance, knowing good and well that I'm probably going to be the loser on this because my house will increase in value. So the developer literally took no risk in entering this agreement because he gets a fixed price. And the city was the one that's going to be the big loser because we've agreed on a price that's probably far less than market value today. And I don't think that's right. I just truly don't, and I get what the mayor's saying about the people, what they can build and everything else. And I'm sure it would turn out great. But the problem is they're the only people we ever talk to. There's other people with money and expertise out there. And I think we just owe it to the people of Simpsonville to, one, maximize the value of the land that we're going to sell and look at different partners that may or may not have better ideas that's going to be a long-term benefit to the city of Simpsonville. And I just, like I said before, there was a lot of things that, to me, from the start, just didn't look good to this, and I just can't support it. Thank you.
Councilmember Hutchings.
I've just got a couple of questions. This agreement that we signed in 21, are we bound by that? And if we don't move forward with this ordinance, are we in breach of contract?
Administrator Gracely?
Yes, that's upon the advice of counsel that we would be. And just to remind everyone, I know it's been said, but I want to say it very clearly. We could have closed on this property then. That council could have adopted the ordinance to allow for the closing of the property. They would never have leased it back to us for $1 because then they were going to be paying property taxes on the property. So they would at least want to recoup that investment. And at the same time, they were negotiating buying the property from us, and council agreed appraised value at that time that the sales contract was entered into. They were purchasing the property on the former SunTrust Bank property on the other side to create a much larger development. And now they're negotiating. They've been trying for 3 years to get the secured Federal Credit Union property, and now they've finally gotten them to agree to dividing that and selling what looks to be about 40% of that property. So they've been waiting for us, not the other way around. And now they're being penalized if we don't go through based on other properties they've accumulated to make this work. Should we have gone ahead and done the ordinance? We could have, but I don't think anybody anticipated with a valid sales contract that this would be an issue, that, the ordinance would be an issue because council had already legally agreed to sell the property.
I believe the thought process was this was a formality, that the property was sold in 2021. This is just a formality to put the things in place that we're required to have in place to finalize that sale and have them pay us for it.
And Councilmember Ariel, to your point also, it was never about the maximum price we could get for the property. It was about the highest and best use. And part of council's decision then was based on the adjoining property being part of this development and not just having it be a mid-block property. Now there's a corner piece to it with the former SunTrust property. And so that was a lot of the consideration too. And the idea was always that the city would get full appraised value for the property at the time that they agreed to sell it, which is what is part of the sales contract.
Councilmember Root.
So I'll echo what everybody said. I wasn't part of the previous council either. I came in this a little confused why things were done the way they were, and that's just kind of the bag we've been given at this point. I'm more concerned that a potential lawsuit would far be much more on the taxpayer's expense than the difference of what we would get from that piece of property in 3 years of accumulation value. So I'm always going to be leery of putting the city in a cost of a lawsuit. And if they're advising us that this indeed would do that, then I'm going to be very leery not to agree with what a previous council has agreed to. I would like to ask Councilmember Pinkerton if tabling this to put it out in the public for a few weeks longer, is that where you're going with this? Is that your main hiccup here, or is it more what Councilmember Arias were referring to?
No, I'm not interested necessarily in tabling this to move it forward. I was really concerned about the process of what we did at the beginning. And if what the mayor says is true, then I'll stand by that. But I just had my concern that we weren't doing this procedurally correct. And I don't know that I'll get over that, but I'll stand with the vote as it goes.
Councilmember Roche.
I can definitely appreciate the perspective from Councilmember Root, Councilmember O'Rear, and Councilmember Pinkerton, because it's difficult to come in at this stage when so much has already been agreed to, and now you're being asked to actually finalize something that you weren't a part of the process to do. And I understand all these questions, and I don't think I have much more to offer. When they came to us in 2021, it has taken 4 years for them to get agreements in place, because they didn't just want City Hall, they pretty much want that entire piece. And so they've had to negotiate deals like Administrator Gracely said with other entities, other property owners on both ends, to be able to build what they want to build and give us something that we can work with them on to better Simpsonville. The appraisal thing, I had questioned that earlier today, and the difference in what the city would have paid in a lease back agreement year to year, because they could have leased it back for full value of what that property would normally lease for. We probably would have, bit off our nose to spite our face, because yes, it would probably appraise for more now, undoubtedly, but that's what we would have lost money had we leased it back for 4 years. This company was willing to, these developers were willing to allow us to stay there until this building was ready. And that gave them time to buy the other pieces that they need. It's a workable situation. It's very unlike residential real estate sales. At this level, there's so much cooperation that has to happen. It's a give and a take. And we could have put it out on open market. I've heard this over and over again. The city would not have been happy if the former City Hall was turned into a comic book store, okay, because a resident bought it. That's a prime piece of real estate. And we would like it, I think, collectively as council and as a city, we would like to see a developer take it and make it into something that we can all be proud of and enjoy, maximize the space there. And so by entering into this cooperative agreement, we've given them the time they need, and they've given us the time that we needed to get everything done here and build this new property. That's the give and the take. And I mean, we could get it reappraised and then insist on a new value. I just think that would be a kick in the teeth to somebody, to a company that's been working with us so well. Now that said, I still think that they can come back to us with a plan that we like a little bit better. And I believe that Administrator Gracely has said they are working on that. There were just, some minor things that we needed to work out as to what is built there and how it fits with the rest of downtown. So I'm inclined to keep this moving. The ordinance wasn't introduced before because, from an obvious, you can see what's in there. It literally names Blue Ridge Land Holdings, LLC. We wouldn't put that out until we were ready to actually do the sales contract. It had to happen this way. These developers need a certain amount of anonymity while they are in the forming stages to be able to get the best angle on what they need to accomplish. The market is so competitive. There's no reason we would have put this out there and harmed them in some way as they plan. I don't have a problem with the ordinance being now because right now is when we're signing the contract. So they needed to come out together. I will say I would like to see them bring something back to the table a little bit more refined than what we saw at the last meeting. They listened to us. I think that they're in agreement that they can polish it up some. I'm going to vote yes to pass this, but I will say if we don't have that new plan in place before the next vote, I will probably vote no at that time or vote to postpone it until we do. Something else that I would like to see in the contract, and I think the city attorney would need to weigh in on, what I don't want to see happen is that we don't come to an agreement after this. They purchased the property at an appraised value from 4 years ago. We don't come to an agreement, and they can resell it to another developer, and we would have no say-so. We would have lost our 4-year edge that we just worked so hard for with this company. I don't want to see that happen, so I think that some language needs to change in the contract between now and the next meeting to add that they are not allowed to resell it undeveloped. If they want to sell it after they develop it, that's their legal right to do that. But right now, I don't want the city to lose its edge in negotiations as to what goes there. That's it.
Minister Gracely?
I just wanted to clarify a couple points. I think Councilmember Roche makes some really good points, and I would need to let everyone know that I had a phone conversation with one of the principals of the development company on Friday, and he indicated that they're making substantial progress toward what council commented on in executive session 2 weeks ago. They know what you all want, and they're working toward that. They also will provide a memorandum of understanding and or a development agreement to accompany the sale of the property so that there is another then legal binding contract that would force them to do exactly what they're saying they're going to do before there's any rezoning, which gives you another crack at it too. But it was too soon to enter an MAU after the last discussion because there were some very differences about how much residential versus how much commercial. Once they come back with an agreement or with a product that council is comfortable with, that memorandum of understanding can then be part of this process as well. And I agree with you. If that's not accomplished before second reading, I think it should be postponed until we have accomplished a memorandum of understanding and development agreement that everybody, the developers and city council, can agree on. That's protection for both sides.
Council? Councilmember Hutchings.
I just want to say I agree with Councilmember Roche that I would also be willing to vote yes this evening with the provision that we get that revised plan to our liking before the next vote. If not, I would vote no as well. I'm not pleased with what we have at this point in time as far as the development goes, and I would like to see those refinements done before I would vote for it on the second vote.
Council? All right. On the motion to approve on first reading of Ordinance O-2025-03, sale of city-owned property, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Ariel.
No.
Councilmember Root.
Yes.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Councilmember Roche.
Yes.
Councilmember Councilmember Pinkerton.
No.
Councilmember Hutchings.
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker.
Yes. That motion carries by a vote of 7-2.
5-2, Mayor.
I'm sorry. I've been saying 7 on so many of them. Let me restate that. That motion carries by a vote of 7.
No.
Can't get off. That motion carries by a vote of 5-2. And with that concludes all of our business. If there are no objections, we will stand adjourned.